Hey guys and girls, how's it going? It is springtime. A lot of the wild edibles are starting to pop up, a lot of the early ones. The weather was nice, but it has just started to rain, but it's not going to dampen my spirits. I thought I'd go for a bit of a forage, walk through the woods, and show you guys what I can find. There's tons of stuff starting to come out this time of year, so let's see what I can find. So here we've got your common British hawthorn. It is absolutely everywhere. Even if you don't know this plant, you will recognise it. It grows all throughout the woodlands, by roadsides, in hedges. Later in the year it produces a red berry, which you can do lots of great things with. But early this time of year, these young buds you can pick off, edible. They taste like apple skin. If you get them from like a woodland, they taste sweeter. If you get them from like a ditch or a roadside, they taste more bitter, but a nice tasty little snack. So down here we have the turkey tail, Tremete versicolor. One of the most common fungi you'll find. You can find them all year round. They have no toxic lookalikes. They do have a lookalike, the false turkey tail, but it's also edible. So they are a perfectly safe one, especially for beginners. They are very fibrous. They're very hard to chew. Most people just tend to brew them into a tea, but they can. I have seen people make them into broths. But a great fungi to know, has great medicinal properties as well. Here we have the Scarlet Elf Cup. They're so common this time of year. They've been absolutely exploding this year in particular for some reason. There's another one over there. They're absolutely blanked in this area, just popping up underneath the leaves. Again, a very easy fungi to identify, great one for beginners, and they are so common. Help yourself. But please don't just take this video as a reference, go and look up a proper guide on these, but a great little wild edible to find. So this plant here is what everybody probably knows from their childhood. This is the common stinging nettle, Urtica dioica. It is an amazing wild edible. Lots of medicinal properties. Most people brew it into tea or make nettle soup out of it. It can, however, be eaten raw in an emergency. The stingers are only on the underside, so if you pick a leaf, I just got a bit off there, scrunch it up so all the underside is on the inside of it, and then you can just crunch that up and it will destroy all the stingers and you won't sting the inside of your mouth. But one of my favourites, makes a great tea, it gives you a lot of energy. Got some more Scarlet Elf caps on the ground down here. So here we have another common plant that every single person should recognise out there. This is the dandelion. Now, the leaves of this plant are edible. You can eat them raw, although it's always best to cook everything, or you can brew them into a tea. That's my preferred way to do it. But the real prize on these is actually the roots. They have a big substantial taproot. It can be up to 6 inches long and as thick as your thumb. It is quite bitter, but it's a substantial source of carbs. But the most common use for it actually is to make coffee out of it. Back in the old Soviet Union, when they couldn't get coffee, and the people used to roast the roots until they were black, then grind them down into a powder and make a coffee substitute. It's not amazing, I'll tell you, but it's really good for you. It's got a lot of health benefits. Here we have some more hawthorn. It's in a lot more open area, so it's got more sun, so the leaves have bloomed far better. When they're still this green, they are still very tasty. When they get later on in the year, they get dark, they get very bitter, but as long as they're still this nice light green colour, they are still very tasty. So this plant right here is one of the more aesthetic wild edibles this time of year. This is the lesser celandine. It's got these amazing heart-shaped leaves and these almost firework-esque exploding flowers at the top. Now, it's a member of the buttercup family, and so it's actually poisonous when raw. However, you can harvest the roots. The roots are nodular, and once harvested, if you cook them, some people roast them in the fire, some people boil them. They have a potato-esque flavour, and they're easy to gather in abundance, so they're a great staple this time of year, again, if cooked properly. So before harvesting these, please thoroughly look up a guide and thoroughly learn how to cook them properly. But yeah, a great one to know. It's just started to rain, but as you can see, we've got a huge patch of celandine right here. It goes all the way up there, all the way down this side, all them yellow flowers. Very common. So down here we've got a plant you'll probably smell before you actually see. This here is commonly known as wild garlic or ramsons. It's actually a type of wild onion. Now later in the year it will grow a stem with a flower on the end. The stem is edible, the whole plant is edible. It's absolutely amazing. If you pick it and give it a smell, it smells incredibly strongly of oniony garlic. Adds a lot of flavour, a very common wild edible, a very choice wild edible for most people. Easily to identify, just be careful it's not mixed in with, there's a lot like grass and stuff mixed in here. So it's easy to identify, but it's often mixed in with other things, so make sure if you're picking lots of it, you're not picking some other random leaves at the same time. And like I said, later in the year I prefer the stems, but the leaves are incredible as well. I've made garlic bread out of these. They also have some medicinal properties. They're supposedly good with hay fever if you pick some of the leaves and inhale them. The leaves don't dry out very well, but the stems, you can actually preserve them, dry them out, and they'll last a long time. So a great year-round supply of garlic if you need it. Now this right here is not one I would recommend you foraging on your day-to-day time, as it is illegal in most places, and it's very pretty, you know. Save it for the nature, save it for the photographers. This is the primrose, Primula vulgaris. The leaves, the whole plant is edible. It used to be a very common salad green. The real choice with parts of this plant though is the root system. It has a lot of like spaghetti-like roots, so you pull it up, wash the dirt off, boil them up, and you've got kind of natural spaghetti right there. Love a good bit of moisture. Yes, I'm very moist on a walk. Right here we've got another plant everyone will recognise instantly. This is the daisy. You'll find this in your backyard, in a field by a roadside, pretty much anywhere where there's outside you'll find these. Now, despite them being so common, most people don't know that the entire plant is actually edible. I would make sure they've not been stomped on or peed on by a dog or something. But as well as making beautiful daisy chains as a child, you could dig these up. They've got good root system on them with a lot of carbs in there. Throw them in the stew pot. This plant right here is again rather beautiful. This is purple dead nettle. It's a member of the mint family or the dead nettle family. They look very similar to nettles, but they don't sting them. No stingers on these at all. Now, they are edible, but they do have some medicinal properties, so I would look up their side effects before actually eating them, because you don't want to accidentally medicate yourself. So best to use sparingly or just for medicinal purposes, these ones. But a beautiful and a good one to know just in case. This is another one you might remember from being a child. This is cleavers, most commonly known as sticky buds. You just pull it off at school, throw it at people, it'd stick to you. It's got that Velcro-like consistency on it. When these are fully grown, they can get to a couple of feet high. Right now, they're all mostly small. This one's the biggest one I've been able to find. Most of them are pretty small around here. Because of that Velcro-y, hairy texture, they're not good to eat raw. They're best used blanched or made into a tea. I quite like cleavers tea. Weirdly, I don't know why. It's got a nice herbal flavour to it, but a good one to know. Very, very common, so you can just harvest as many as you want. Gallium aperines, later in the year, it does produce seeds, which I have seen ground into a coffee on a video. I've never tried that myself, but yeah, cleavers or Gallium aperine, as it's scientifically known as, check that out. Right here we have one of my favourite wild edibles. It's growing all along here, them white flowers you can see. It's growing among all those celandines up there, down to here. This is a chickweed. It's quite easy to identify by these little white flowers at the top of it. Now these bloom later on. When it's young, it doesn't tend to have them, so if you're a beginner, I'd wait till it has them for positive identification. It doesn't have a strong taste. It's mild, very like lettuce-esque in general, but I actually just really love this edible. It's one of my favourites. A great one to know. So I was just walking back to the car and I spotted this nice little edible. I am right next to a road here. This is hairy bitter cress. It has a great little peppery cress taste, adds a nice little spice to your salad, rather than just a plain old boring leaf salad that we often end up eating out in the wild.